Welcome to our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who usually do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. But today is a very, very special occasion because we're actually doing an author interview with the wonderful Alison Cochrun about her new book out in bookstores now, Kiss Her Once for Me.
Yes. Alison, thanks for coming on.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. Alison is a former high school teacher who has published two books now. First was The Charm Offensive, which came out in 2021. And this book came out just in November. So it's November brand new 1st. To shelves. We hope everyone has got their copy. We warned you were supposed to be buying it. So you better have it in hand. We've warned you. But this book is amazing. It's so good. You should pick it up.
The best.
It follows Ellie, and throughout parts of the novel, we see descriptions of a comic strip she has that she's published online, where she spent a perfect snow day with a woman named Jack, who she met at Powell's bookstore in Portland, right after she moved there for her dream job as an animator. Then we also see a different perspective in the timeline a year later, as her life has hit her a bit harder. She's working at a coffee shop and she's struggling a little bit mentally and a little bit with money. So she ends up accepting a fake engagement to a man to solve all of her money problems. And she's shocked when he whisks her away to his family cabin and she finds out that Jack is his sister. And cuteness and lots of snowy music and everything.
Oh my gosh. All the Christmas feels, all the winter vibes. Oh, love it so much.
Like, Alison, what made you decide to write like a Christmas novel for this time around?
So honestly, the Christmas part happened unintentionally. I did not set out to write a Christmas book. It was June of 2020. I had just sold The Charm Offensive to Atria Books, and my agent was like, fantastic. Now what's your second book? And I had to like come up with an idea, and I had none. I could not think of like a single idea for another rom-com. And I think just the pressure of going through the submission process. And so I started thinking about like rom-coms that I really love. And one of my absolute favorite movies is While You Were Sleeping, starring Sandra Bullock and Bill Pullman. Yeah. I mean, Bill like Pullman I watched amazing. That. Oh my gosh, Bill Pullman. Yes. I watched that VHS like down to the nub as a child. And so I was like, okay, well, what if I like do While You Were Sleeping, but make it queer? And in that movie, like Bill Pullman just is like a Portland butch lesbian. Like he just like stomps around in like combat boots and light wash jeans, and he's got flannels and that Carhartt and the floppy hair. And so I was like, okay, yeah, just that, but make it a butch lesbian. And that was kind of the initial like inspiration for writing this book. And because I was not feeling particularly creative, I was like, well, While You Were Sleeping is set at the holidays. I guess I have to write it as a holiday book. And that just became what I did. And so it was not intentional to write a holiday romance, but I'm so glad that I did, because I've also met a lot of other authors who wrote amazing holiday romances this year.
Awesome. So I follow you on Instagram, and I'm always like watching for details about your next books and everything. And I noticed that something you do is you create like mood boards and playlists and TikToks that seem to be kind of like built around each of your stories. Is this something that you typically do for each of your books? Like before you're crafting them, or like while you're crafting them, to kind of like give you ideas or help you make the story?
So mood boards, no. I tend to only make those mood boards like for social media purposes. Okay. And they're not even fancy mood boards. For those of you listening who haven't seen them, they're just like, I find like 9 pictures and I put them in like a 3x3 grid.
Sure.
But I do like doing that. And I find that like usually that conveys sort of the mood or the vibe. And it's fun to play around with that. But for playlists, yes, that's more crucial for my creative process, to find songs that either capture the mood or the like atmosphere that I'm going for, or songs that remind me of characters or pivotal scenes, or just like emotions that I want to convey. And I tend to listen to my playlists like on repeat obsessively while I'm in the drafting and revision process.
I mean, I've listened to the Charm Offensive playlist so many times. I can't tell you how many times.
I was going to ask if you like listen to the playlist as you're writing the book. So it's awesome that you're picking stuff out and then like taking it over into your writing materials. That's awesome.
Yeah. And usually those playlists are like sloppier. Like the Charm Offensive ones are like a very polished version of one giant playlist that I listen to while drafting Charm. And mostly I listen to like Love Story by Taylor Swift while writing that book, just like over and over and over again. But yeah, I like the one I have for Kiss Her Once for Me and the one I have for my next book. Like I just listened to, like with Kiss Her Once for Me especially, it was important because it is a holiday book. So I created a holiday playlist and then would like put it on, and it didn't matter if it was March or July or whatever. I could kind of like get into that mood.
How did you pick which like Christmas songs you like name dropped? Because you named some excellent ones. Like I love seeing Casey Musgraves in there and like so many different ones.
So about half of them are just songs that I like really love. And the other half were like listening to other Christmas playlists and kind of finding songs that I was like, oh, I've never heard this, but like, this is perfect. This is what I want. And then just like slopping them all together.
And a lot of Evermore in there.
So much Evermore. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, that is the vibe. I was going for an Evermore vibe for sure.
Awesome. Definitely nailed it.
Thank you.
Can I ask, is your music style a lot like Jack's, where it's like old school pop?
Yeah. I mean, old school and current pop. Like I just love like female musicians singing bops. Like I'm here for it all the time. I also love a good like happy sad song. But yes, I am very similar to Jack in my musical tastes.
Love it. So a lot of the family and found family dynamics that we get in Kiss Her Once for Me are really great. I love that we get like boozy grandmas that you don't expect to be friends. We get like a best friend that lives all the way across the country who's more family than actual family members. We get moms who are not too great, dads who are not too great. And I was just kind of wondering, like, which of these relationships felt most natural to write, and if there were any that were more difficult to write for you?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. I mean, one of the things about the found family in this book is it was also not so much a conscious decision as like in the movie while you were sleeping. She, fakes this relationship with someone in a coma and then like kind of gets adopted into the family. And in that story, her parents have both passed away. And so she is really longing for that sense of family. But for Ellie in the book, it's that she has parents who are estranged. And writing the relationship Ellie has with her mom was both really easy in terms of like, like the mom made sense to me as a character. And like, I have someone in my life who's sort of similar to her, but that was also like one of the more challenging things to write, even though it came really easily. And then, yeah, I mean, I just love writing about grandmas. Like my grandma passed away while I was writing this book. And like, I love her very much. And she was like a real spitfire. So that was really fun. And then, yeah, I just like stole from my own life. I'm realizing a lot because like the character Meredith, who is her best friend across the country, like I have a Meredith who lives across the country. And I kind of took all of her good qualities and infused it into the character of Meredith.
Yeah, you can definitely pick up on how realistic all of these relationships feel because they're messy and complicated and awesome and loving because that's how real life is. So it's so neat to see all that depicted in a book like this. So
you're going to hear a lot of us just gushing about this book because we've
loved it so much. Keep it coming. The stress of free pub. So it sounds great to me. Bring it on.
Yeah, we'll just keep talking at you and be like, well, this is why we also loved your book. No. I noticed in your acknowledgments, like you talked about someone helping you flesh Jack out. Like, what was kind of difficult about pinning Jack down with her personality, especially since this is kind of like a divergent from the Charm Offensive, where this is like a single POV versus a dual?
So that's exactly why it was so incredibly challenging. I finished writing Charm, and I was like, that's it. I'm never doing dual POV again. Because there are a lot of challenges in terms of how you like move between the points of view and how you kind of set up scenes. And I worked really hard to try to make those transitions feel organic. And then by the end was exhausted. And so I was like, okay, book 2, single POV, let's go. And I got into it. I was like, this is so easy. I'm sticking with one character. And the further I got into the story, the more I realized it was really hard for me to create Jack as like a multi-dimensional, like nuanced character without ever getting to be inside her head. Like that was incredibly challenging for me. And so one of my critique partners, who incidentally is actually a former student who's now getting his MFA in poetry, but helped me. Like he's read my books and we've worked together and spent just a ton of time like talking about how to make basically Jack not seem like a manic pixie dream butch, right? Like that was the fear, is that like she would just come across as like this idealized vision of what Ellie wants, as opposed to like an actual human being with her own like desires and motivations and her own flaws. And so it was just so many conversations about Jack.
I mean, it worked. Like when Jack on the Page is amazing. So
Yes.
I was just really interested to see kind of how you came about her, because, you know, it's a butch Bill Pullman, but like, that's awesome.
Allison, when you read Kiss Her Once for Me, you can like feel like you're in Portland, and you like picture yourself in the bookstore and the Airstream and at their cabin. I was kind of wondering, like, as somebody who's never been to Portland, like what was one of your favorite places to write about, and like where should someone have a meet cute if they're going to Portland?
I mean, at Powell's, City of Books, for sure. Okay. Yeah. When I like decided, especially because my, Charm, like it takes place for the most part in LA. And then they travel around the world, and then like all the places in the book are places I've been to, except I really don't know LA that well. And so in terms of writing LA scenes, like I was on Google Maps a lot, like trying to figure things out. And I was like, you know what, second book, we're doing this easy style. Let's set it in Portland, which I know, and I can draw from that. And when I was trying to decide, like, where would 2 people have a meet cute in Portland, I was like, oh, there's no place more romantic than Powell's. Obviously, they would meet in a bookstore. And so that was my favorite one to write. And I think obviously, like any book lover who comes to Portland, like that is a very iconic place to visit. I don't recommend walking across the Burnside Bridge. That's just like, don't do that. Generally speaking, I don't recommend that as a fun activity, but there are lots of very beautiful places in Portland.
That's awesome. I went to Powell's twice when I was in Portland.
So I was gonna say Hannah could have had a meet cute there. She missed the opportunity.
Only I didn't spend enough time in the graphic novel section.
The real truth though is like the likelihood of having a meet cute in Powell's is so slim, because it's a bunch of like Pacific Northwest like book nerds, right? Like, so people are like not there to like talk or like make flirtatious eye contact. They're like on a mission to like find something.
They're finding a bunch of books to bring home and not read. That's what I always do.
Yeah, exactly. And so I feel like only with someone like Jack, who actually doesn't like to read, could you have a meet cute with. Yeah.
But I also think like there's something about your book. We talked about this a lot. Like there's so many different moving parts, and your plot structure is so amazing, where like I was like, how is she going to be able to make this work? And then all of a sudden, like you would bring in like a nuanced thing where it's like, how is Ellie going to like feel about seeing Jack, and she's engaged to her brother, that it's like, oh, but the brother is like this amazing person that seems like relatively straightforward, and he has his own baggage that he's dealing with, so he's kind of like off screen for a reason. And it's just like so well structured. So even with the Powell scene, I was like, Powell's is so busy all the time. I'm like, yeah, but it's a snow day and people don't know how to drive in the snow in Portland. So of course they're the only two people in Powell's bookstore. Like,
no one would be driving. It would be, yeah.
So kudos to you. The structure of your plot is fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
And this is another question about Jack. I feel like I'm only asking about her, but she was such an amazing character to me. You mentioned Gilmore Girls in this novel. I got a ton of Lorelai Gilmore vibes from Jack, and I wanted to know if that's intentional, because like she's this person who's a little bit stubborn, and she's like, no, I have to make my own way, and I'm going to make myself miserable, even if I could get help. Like, no, I'm not going to do that with my family. And it was so Lorelai Gilmore to me.
Oh my gosh, Hannah, this is my first time making that connection. So that was not intentional. I wish I could take credit for that. That was not intentional at all. But maybe subconsciously, because yeah, like I think that like independence and that stubbornness is very Lorelai.
So Laura, it was just so great to like see that in a 2022 perspective, because I feel like a lot of people, as they revisit Gilmore Girls, are like, Lorelai can be so deeply selfish, but like seeing Jack, I'm like, no, there are people like this all the time. So
yeah, and like people have like families are complicated, and people can have reasons to not want financial support from families, or to be able to do things on their own.
For sure. So something that's like really creative about this book is how you use the Snow Day webcomics to give like flashbacks to last Christmas and let us know what happened then. And I was kind of wondering, like, how'd you come up with that idea, and like what led you to like showing how Ellie expresses herself this way?
Yeah, I mean, it was another long journey. Early on in drafting, there wasn't two timelines. And so when I first started drafting it, there was still a coma involved, because I was like basing it off of while you were sleeping, but there weren't two timelines. And I think the first time I wrote the scene where Ellie and Jack meet in the present, it just felt so clear to me that they like needed to have history, that I needed to make that departure from the source material. And that in order for the plot to work, like they needed to know each other already. And so I ended up writing, I think I wrote the Powell scene, like that was the first flashback I ever wrote, and just decided like, yeah, this book has to have dual timelines. Like I'm just going to have flashback scenes, and I'm going to have present tense scenes, and I'm going to somehow make this work. And then when I turned in my first draft to my editor was like, okay, I really love Ellie. Like she is a great character. But also she's like miserable, and she needs like something good in her life to like look forward to. And I was like, all right, dang, Caitlin. And so I was like, okay, all right. And so Caitlin was like, I think like we should just learn more about her art, and like what kind of art she does for herself, and like find a way to incorporate that more into the story. And so it just made sense to me to kind of turn the flashbacks into something that connects to her art. And I'm like still super worried about how it actually works, because it's supposed to be a web comic, but it's all in prose because I'm not an artist and this is a novel. And but I wanted to kind of use it almost just as like it's just a plot device, that we see the heading of what the web comic would look like as an introduction into those flashbacks. And I am really happy I did it that way, even if it's kind of a gamble in terms of like, will people get it? Will they be expecting illustrations?
I'm just hoping
I loved it. I want to take up drawing.
I was going to say, I just hope like a huge fan is like, no, I want to develop these into like actual graphics, and like have your own graphic novel based on these, because like that was like, I will say your prose were so vivid. It was really easy to imagine them as a web comic. And like, I was very interested to see how Ellie would have described them, because she's sometimes harder on herself than she should be. So it'd be interesting to see her in art form.
Yeah. I mean, I wish that would be amazing to be able to see all of them. I had Vanessa Kelly, who's an artist, who does a lot of fan art, and also their own art, create a couple panels of the first webcomic, just so that people could like, okay, that's what it would look like, but here it is in prose.
That's amazing. And a lot of this book does deal with Ellie and her art, and kind of like how she is feeling like a very big failure in this moment. And the way you talk about failure is like, it's so perfect in the way like you can have deep bad thoughts about yourself and like not recognize the outside context to it. And like, especially as you talk about failure and reaching a goal, is there something about like this particular book where it just felt like this was the right time to write about that, or like kind of what inspired that?
I mean, it was honestly the wrong time, because I was when I was writing this book, like I was gearing up for Charm to release, and I was just crippled by the idea of failure. And like I had such a difficult time celebrating what was like truly amazing accomplishment. Like I never, I mean, I always dreamed of publishing a book, and then, you know, I never thought it would actually happen. And that was so joyous. But I was kind of clouded over by like all of my fears of failure and what that looks like. And so that is something that I was working on extensively in therapy as I was writing this book. And I think that's kind of why it became Ellie's like sort of central, you know, flaw, her central weakness or place of growth, is that she has to accept like that taking risks can be worth it. That like going after what you want can be worth the risk of it not working out. And also kind of redefining what failure is, especially as an artist. And so, yeah, it was a lot of just me being like, this is what I'm processing in therapy. Let's make it fiction.
It seems like a good topic to sit with more.
Yeah, I might as well torture myself, which is how it felt at times. So I was like, why am I writing this? I'm so stressed.
Aww. So you've talked a couple times about like parts of you that are in the novel. Would you say that Ellie is the character that you see yourself in the most?
For sure. Ellie is absolutely the character that I think most resembles myself in this story. And of course, like not in every single way. She's not simply a stand-in for me. But I gave her a lot of things that I have had to work through in my own life, like both in the past and also like very presently, and I'm still in the process of working on. And I think in The Charm Offensive, the character Charlie is the character who is most like me. And writing that book was really like empowering for me, because I disguised myself as like this handsome tech genius and was like, haha, no one will know it's me. And then I like worked through all of my issues, through Charlie as a character. And I think writing Ellie, who, you know, looks more like me, is also a woman, like that was kind of me trying to be a little bit more comfortable, like writing a character who is like me, and people will know she is like me. People will know that we have these similarities in our experiences.
Awesome. Yeah, Ellie and Charlie are both the characters that I found myself more connected to. And so I was just kind of curious if you also felt connected to them, or maybe a different character. So
oh yeah, no, it's Ellie for sure.
See, I was the Dave character who was just eating junk food and drinking copious amounts of caffeine.
Okay, I mean, that's also me.
Yeah.
I have also had to be on a journey to like learn how to feed myself appropriately for my mental health.
Gosh,
but like,
right.
yes.
I think someone once judged me recently for like drinking like 10 cups of coffee a day. And I was like, listen, I stopped drinking alcohol very recently. Like, don't make me give up another vice. Like, I'm done.
One
enough.
at a time.
Yeah, exactly. So that's awesome. I know we talked about like how much you kind of saw yourself in Ellie, but like what character in this book surprised you the most as you spent more time with them as you were writing them?
Probably, I was going to say Dylan, but I did actually have a pretty clear image of Dylan as this sort of prickly character who is actually just a giant marshmallow who wants to be loved. And so I think maybe my answer is Andrew, because he was a tough character in terms of his role within the story changed a lot over multiple drafts, because he is the person she gets fake engaged to. So he is the Peter Gallagher, but he's not in a coma. And so he's like in the plot of the book, and you have to kind of figure out what to do with him in this whole dynamic. And there were like phases where he was kind of an asshole. And there were drafts where like he was just this like glorious himbo who was not very smart, but like, oh, so sweet. And he kind of went through all these phases, and I think in some ways became kind of an amalgamation of all of the different personalities that I tried on for him. But I think he surprised me in the sense that, I think I ended up exploring more of his kind of issues around intimacy than I expected to. And then got to know him a lot better through that.
That's awesome, because he and Ellie then get to like commiserate over their issues with intimacy
Mhm.
and where it overlaps.
Their relationship
So-
is one of my favorites in this because they start off kind of like scheming together, and then towards the end they've grown to be friends through this mutual weird strange situation, and it's just like a really beautiful arc for them.
I also like I so much appreciate you making the like decision to have her be upset with him at the end. This is a little bit spoilery, but like I really think that an easy out is to her to be like, oh, I never thought about you. But for her to actually be like, no, I valued our friendship and what we went through together. I thought that was a very unique choice. It was very strong.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And again, I think he made most sense as a character once I accepted that he was part of this found family unit. So same as like, that she wants the sense of family, and he is that brother figure, and she gets this sort of mother figure in these grandmas, and gets to kind of be part of a family unit that is based on love.
So my next question is, what do we have to do to make the Butch Oven a reality? Because it's such a cute name, and it just seemed like the perfect fit for Jack, that she, especially when you get that backstory and you learn about her upbringing a little bit more, that she would want to incorporate that into a business and make it her own and make it this inclusive space. So I want this to be a thing so bad. I wanted to be at the soft open, and it was just so great.
I wish, but I could never do that. I could never somehow branch out my mark. Like, I have no business acumen whatsoever.
You're great at coming up with names.
No, I'm actually not great at coming up with names. My real life Meredith came up with that name.
Oh my
She's
gosh.
my go-to pun person when I'm writing. I just text her and I'm like, I need the name of a bakery owned by a butch lesbian. And then she sent me back like 15 titles, and I went with the Butch Oven because I was just like, that's ridiculous. I think my editor will probably make me change it, but let's do it.
It's so cute. Like, I laughed when I read it, like, oh my gosh.
Oh, that's amazing. Leave it to a lawyer to come up with a good pun. So
oh yeah, no, she's got all the good puns. Yeah, whenever I'm really stuck on something silly that like I just need this one creative thing. I need, like, what would they call this on Ever After? Like, what would the equivalent be of a group date? Like, help me. Meredith is always there to send me like a ridiculous number of ideas.
That's awesome.
Love that.
Well, speaking of Meredith, like Dylan and Meredith are amazing as best friend characters. And like, in fact, I listened to like some people talking about Charm Defensive, and they also talk about how great the best friend characters are in there. And like, you're really great at writing them being like very supportive, but very honest. Like, how do you usually develop like the best friend character archetype in these?
Well, I think from like an emotional standpoint, I have some really incredible friends. So I have my real life Meredith, whose name and red hair I stole for this book. And then I have my best friend, Michelle, who like reads everything that I write and provides feedback and is just like wonderful and amazing. And they're both just incredible people. And so I think like at the core of all my friend characters are like, I've been so blessed to have these really, just really amazing female friendships in my life. But I also think like from a more like clinical and like structural standpoint, the best friend character serves the function of essentially like helping the main character on their journey, right? Like, that is what they do. So they are there to instigate. They're there to like tell us what we need to know as readers, right? Like, what can the character not see in themselves that like we need to know as part of their journey? And they're there to like provide often, just like the emotional support that a person would need if they were on a journey toward like trying to become a healthier version of themselves, right? And so I think that's Meredith, in trying to facilitate that for Ellie throughout the book, and trying to help her essentially unstick her life, right? She was very stagnant in the book.
perpetual suck, as it were.
Yes, exactly.
The last one's a little bit silly. So I'll ask you another serious question. But so this is also a little bit spoilery, but something I've noticed in both your books is that Dave and Ellie have to spend some time alone and working on themselves before they get to their happy ending. I don't know if this is like in particularly good question, but like, is there something you value as a writer when you're writing romances that they like have to find strength in themselves before they commit to another person?
I mean, I think in both Ellie's case and in like Dave's case in the Charm Offensive, we have characters who like have too much work to do, right? To just like jump to a happy ending. And I had a lot of stress because the end of the two books are fairly similar, right? In both cases, the character like, Dave chooses to leave, whereas Ellie doesn't. But have to spend some time alone, like building themselves back up again, like getting into therapy, like doing some of the work that needs to happen. And I think that honestly, I mean, I do value that when it's necessary for characters. And I think in these first two books, I just happened to write characters who reflected a little bit of my own struggles with mental health. And therefore, like they had to have that time alone before they could reach their happy ending. And in my third book, that is like not the case. And so kind of figuring out what that looks like for characters who don't need that time apart.
Well, we can't wait to see what the third book brings, but
well, my question's kind of related to that. Like with your process, like how have these books kind of been different as far as your writing process goes? And what advice would you have for people that are like trying to kind of get into writing?
Oh, I think I'm a horrible person to give advice. But I'll explain it because my writing process for Charm and for Kiss Her Once for Me, like could not be more different. So the Charm Offensive, like I had the concept on like a Wednesday. It was like, haha, that would be fun. And then I started writing it like on that Thursday. And I wrote the first draft of the Charm Offensive in 6 days. It was one of those things where like, I couldn't stop writing. Like I was writing like, 12 plus hours a day. It just like poured out of me. Like I wasn't thinking about any of my choices. It was just like a weird creative fever dream. Like I don't recommend that at all. That's not my advice. Because I was not like showering or like feeding myself healthy meal, I wasn't taking care of myself, but it was a moment where I just had this total like creative tornado and I had to see it through. Whereas with Kiss Her Once for Me, I had the idea in June of 2020. And then I think I didn't send a full draft to my editor until November of 21 or October of 21, maybe. And so it took a really long time to get that book written. And I wasn't all instinct like it was with Charm. Like I said, there were so many versions of this where like Andrew was in a coma and then like there were no flashbacks. And in the version that I sold to my editor, there was no family. The found family element was entirely friend. I know it was a friend group in Portland and I really liked that, but it just felt like having an actual family worked better. And so we changed it. So it was just much, much harder, and I was publishing a book as I was writing a new book. And I think there's a lot of anxiety that comes with that for most writers. I think the second book tends to be just a lot harder because suddenly you're writing for an audience who exists as opposed to like for yourself and the few friends that you send your stuff to. And so it was, vastly different. So in terms of advice for people who want to write, I guess my advice would be like every book is different and every writer is different, like in terms of what that process looks like. And there is not one right way to do it. We talk a lot about plotters who outline everything and, pantsers who outline nothing. And I think in most cases, like most of us are a combination of those two things. And it really just depends. And so I think not comparing yourself to like what people on Twitter say their writing process is, just like embrace
Okay.
whatever works for you.
I like
Love
that.
that.
I think that's good advice.
Yeah, that's great advice. I almost feel bad for this question, but I do have to ask it because it was one of my favorite moments of the book. In the book, you talk about My Best Friend's Wedding, and Meredith loudly states that Dermot Mulrooney is the actual villain of My Best Friend's Wedding. And I feel like this movie like recently got argued like how terrible Julia Roberts is, but I loved your particular take because he is the villain in that movie. He does flirt with her a lot. He's marrying a 20-year-old girl who he expects to drop out of college and travel the world with him. And like he's sending mixed signals all over the place. So like thank you for putting in those romantic comedy references, but like what's your favorite romantic comedy? That's what inspired me to ask this question.
Oh, yeah, it's not My Best Friend's Wedding. And I recently rewatched, like I made that reference and was like, you know what? I haven't watched this movie in like a decade. I better go back and give it one more shot. And it just doesn't do it for me. Like people are unkind to each other. And like Cameron Diaz deserves better. But anyway, favorite rom-coms, I mean, truly, While You Were Sleeping is like one of my OG favorite rom-coms. I love While You Were Sleeping. Not While You Were Sleeping, I just said that. Sleepless in Seattle. And I know some people argue it's not a rom-com because it's somewhat light on the com. But I love it. And that was another one where like I started watching the VHS when I was 10 with my dad, and we would just like every Friday I was with him, because my parents separated. We would just watch that VHS, and like I have that movie still to this day memorized. So I love that one. And then my favorite teen rom-com is obviously 10 Things I Hate About You. It's just so
Classic.
beautiful.
It
Yeah.
has to be. It's a rule almost. So I watched that when I was far too young.
It's so good. It like came out when I was in like 6th grade, and it was just like the coolest thing that had ever happened to the 6th grade. So I love that movie.
Good tips. And with that, thank you so much for writing Kiss Her Once for Me. This book was spectacular. Everyone who hasn't read it yet and listened to this entire interview, what are you guys waiting for? Go get
it now. Alison, one of the things that I've liked is seeing like on Bookstagram, like how much this book and how much the Charm Offensive mean to people when they read them. So thank you for writing these books like this that are inclusive, that show messy people in messy situations, going through real life situations and finding real love. So thank you so much for that, because they're really important to readers.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was incredibly nice. Thank you very much. And thank you so much for having me and for reading the book.
Do you want to tell everyone where they can find your information or your Twitter and Instagram handles?
Absolutely. I'm terrible on Twitter, but you can find me there at Alison Cochrun, and on Instagram, where I'm slightly better, also at Alison Cochrun. And my website is AlisonCochrun.com.
And everyone should go follow all of those just to keep up with everything you are doing, because it's amazing. Well, we appreciate you taking the time, and everyone, thank you for joining in, and go buy Kiss Her Once for Me.
Buy it now.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.